I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson. Grade 6 English lesson on commas. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, all right. So we're going to log on and we're going to choose English Language Arts, grade 6. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of commas. All right. So we said that I said the chapter is commas. Our subject is English Language Arts. Grade 6. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on is commas with series, dates, and places. And commas with compound and complex sentences. All right, so we are doing commas, and there is quite a few lessons under the chapter of commas, but we're only going to focus on commas with series, dates, and places, as well as commas with compound and complex sentences. And then in our next lesson, we will continue the rest. All right. So we use commas, right? So when it comes to commas can firstly be used as a pause, But we can also use commas to separate three or more items within a series, right? So we can use commas to separate three or more items within a series, right? So we can then put the comma after each of the item in the list except for the last one. So we don't put a comma by the last one, right? But by if there's three or more items and then within the series, and then we put a comma after each one on the list. So it says that the last comma in the list right before the coordinating conjunction, we call that an Oxford comma, right? So once again, that last comma, right, within the list, right before the coordinating conjunction, and I will give you an example now, we call that the Oxford comma, or we can call it a serial comma. So a serial comma, remember we said that it is either called an Oxford comma or a serial comma. So a serial comma, right, it is something that is considered optional, right? You don't need to, it's optional. But most style guides demand it, right? It's like they tell you that you need to add that. And if we look at an example, right, this is now the series. Okay, so an example, commas that separate the items, right? We have red, comma, white, and blue are the different colors of the American flag, right? And there we have three different colors within that series. So it says red, white, blue, right? But in a proper sentence, right, with adding our commas, we would say red, white, and blue are basically the colors of the American flag. And we see that this comma over here that is just before the coordinating conjunction, which is and, right? We call that an Oxford comma, or we can say it's a serial comma. So it's either an Oxford comma or it's called a serial comma, right? That is considered optional, but most style guides, they demand it. And expressions that consist of pairs. So expression that consists of pairs of words, right? Such as thunder and lightning or lightning and thunder, bread and butter are generally treated as a single item, right? Because it basically goes together. It's like paired words, goes together. So that is basically treated as a single item. So we don't say thunder, comma, lightning and lightning. And an example is, right? College consists typically college costs typically include tuition, room, and board, right? As well as textbooks. So once again, we can say college costs typically include tuition, comma, room and board. So room and board and textbooks. So room and board, it becomes, it's almost like it's classified as a single subject. So we're not going to say room, comma, and, comma, board and. You understand? We're going to say room and board because that is literally or generally treated as a single item. So it's room and board, it goes together, right? And then here we have the comma before our coordinating conjunction, which is and we call that an Oxford comma, or we call that a serial comma. All right. So once again, we see the expressions that consist of pairs of words. It's like words that goes together, right, are generally treated as a single item. And we have an example of room and board. All right. Oopsie. Let's do this. All right. Okay. So now we're going on to the next one, right? We said that series are also, it shows dates, right? So it's commas with dates. So we would say that in dates, right? In dates with a day as well as a year, we use a comma after the day. So we'll put a comma after the day. So, for example, if we were to give the date of today, we would say it is May. Today is the 22nd. So May 22, 2024. Right? That is what they mean when they say that in dates with a day and a year, use a comma after the day. Also use a comma after 30 after the year unless the date ends the sentence. All right. So if our date is like that, right, which is May, we are in the month of May. It is the 22nd today, and the year is 2024. They said we can also do that for months of the year, which is since January 1, 2001 was the first day of this country. Mahatma Gandhi was born on October 2, 1869. So, for example, we said that January 1, 2001 was the first day of the century Mahatma Gandhi was born on October 2. All right. So we say that within dates, we use these commas. Sorry. And when the name of a city is used with the name of its state or country, we use a comma after the city. It's like, for example, saying, I am from Cape Town City. I am from the Western Cape Province, that is in South Africa. And then South Africa is within Africa, right? So when the name of a city is used with the name of its state or country, use a comma after the city. So also use a comma after the state or country unless it ends with. And if we look at an example, it says Chicago, Illinois is known as the Windy City. We've just booked our flight to Athens, Greece. All right. So there's different and many ways in which we can use our comma, right? We said we can use our comma for a series of words, right? And now we can use our comma in dates with a day and a year, and also All right, and now we're looking, look at the commas, right? Look specifically at how or where the commas are. It says when the name of the city is used with the name of its state or country, use a comma after the city. So Chicago, Illinois is known as the Windy City. We've just booked our flights to Athens, Greece. All right. So that is where we just, if you look at these two sentences, not even sentences, but if you look at those, just see where the commas are, right? Because then it means that it will basically, based on the description, it will tell you where or why the commas are there. Like, for example, in dates with a day and a year, we use a comma after the day, right? Also use a comma after a year unless the date ends in September. All right. All right. So once again, we said commas, right? Which is our subject. It is used to separate three or more items within a series. It is also used to express, right? Shows expression that consists of a pair of words. And also in dates with the day and year, use a comma after a day. And when we use the commas with within the series, right? Then remember we put the comma basically after almost all of our words. However, we do not put a comma at the end of that sentence, right? And we said that the last comma, right? Remember your last comma should be comma coordinating conjunction, should be before the coordinating conjunction. So the last comma in the list, right before the coordinating conjunction, we call that the Oxford comma, and we call it the serial comma. All right. All right. And if we look at an example before we go on to our test, right, is red, wine, and blue. Those are considered the colors of the American flag, right? All right. So now we're going to our we're going now to our tutorial to our to aplusstudents.ca, and we're going to aplusstudents.ca where we are going to go over the tutorial, and then we're also going to do the test, right? It is specifically going to be on the series, dates and places, as well as commas with compound and complex sentences. If we don't get to the other one, then we'll do it some other time. So for now, we say that we use commas to separate three or more items within a series. You put a comma after each item of the list. All right, so now we can go to aplusstudents.ca. Once we get to aplusstudents.ca, we are going to do our tutorial lesson. And we are specifically going to be focusing on the lessons of commas with series, dates, and places, commas with compound and complex sentences. So we're going to the first one, which is commas with series, dates, and places. Series, dates, and places. And we say that we use a comma to separate three or more items within a series. We put a comma after each item on the list, except for the last one. The last comma is in the list, right? And the last comma we add just before the conjunction. All right, so we said we use a comma to separate three or more items of series. Once we put a comma after each item in the list, except for the last one, then the last comma in the list right before the coordinating conjunction is called an Oxford comma or a series comma. And the serial comma is sometimes considered optional, but most styles demand it. All right. So we are going to use commas with series, dates, or places. In this case, let us just quickly go over series, dates, as well as places, and then we'll go to our test, right? We use a comma, we said we use a comma to separate items or three or more items within a series, right? Then also expressions, right? Expressions that consist of pairs of words such as thunder and lightning, as well as bread and butter are generally treated as a single item. All right. So as we've noticed, right, another one is in dates with a day and a year, use commas after the day. Also use a comma after the year unless the date ends with September. All right. So now we're going to first look at the activity and then we're going to our test, right? It says we need to correct the text by inserting two commas, which in the skill serial commas are not optional. All right, so we need to insert two commas, right, in order to complete that sentence. It says the United States is the only country with a red, white, and blue flag. And the flag, or we can say the flag of over 30 years or over 30 other nations, we use the same colors. So even flags with like many, many years old, right? Within the other nations, they use the same colors. All right. We're going to select one comma, right? Inserting only one comma. May, I don't think it's this one, but okay, let's go to this one. It says May 6, 1937, the Hindenburg, a German airship, exploded as it landed in Lakehurst, New Jersey. All right. So we can then say if we were to add one comma, there's actually no space to add a comma, right? Let's go to the last one. It says correct the text by inserting two commas. Sometimes we can look at a sentence and you think to yourself like, oh, like there has been such a lot already, a lot of comments. Like the one that you're going to add is not even going to make much of a slight difference. So we're going to select two commas, right? It says surprisingly the most common USA street names are second, third, and first in that row. All right. So now let's go to our test. So now we're going to our test, right? Where we are going to show commas with series, dates, and places. And remember, we said that with commas, with series, dates, and places, we add a comma. Like with series, we add a comma before, or let's say after our word, right? So the commas and the series, commas with series, dates, and places, we add immediately after a specific word, even before the coordinating conjunction and, but we don't put it afterwards, right? That says Elvis Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, and it's still possible to take a tour of his birthplace. All right, so Elvis Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, and it's still possible to take a tour of his birthplace. Or do we say Elvis Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, and it's still possible to take a tour of his birthplace? We need to choose the correct option. Option one or option two. All right, and if we were to choose the correct one, we will choose option one, which is Elvis Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, in 1935, and it's still possible to take a tour of his birthplace. All right, so the first one is correct. We need to correct the we could correct the text by inserting one comma. In 2013, sorry, Nelson Mandela, freedom fighter and former South Africa president, died at the age of 95 at his home in Johannesburg, South Africa. Or do we say in 2013, Nelson Mandela, freedom fighter and former South African president, died at the age of 95 at his home in Johannesburg, South Africa? All right, and if we were to insert our comma, we can say, let's choose option two, and we put it here after, or let's go to, we must insert one. All right, so we can correct, oh, sorry. Before we do that, we said, right? So we chose the first option. So the second one says we must now correct the text by inserting two commas. It says the United States is not only um is not the only country with a red, white, and blue flag. The flags of over 30 other nations use the same color. All right, so if we insert two commas, it says the United States is the only country with a red is not only the it's not the only country with a red, white, and blue flag. The flags of over 30 other nations, they use the same flags. All right. And we chose the first one. Okay, and then the last one, it says in one of the hockey's most exciting overtime games, Bobby Orr scored the winning goal to lead the Boston Bruins or Brains to a Stanley Cup title on May 10, 1970. So we need to insert one comma. All right, and if we were to insert one comma, right, we would say in one of the hockey's most exciting overtime game, Bobby Orr scored the winning goal to lead the Boston Bruins to a Stanley Cup title on May 10, 1970. I think let's go with this one because when we write the date, we must write the month, the day, comma, and then the year. All right. All right, so that is the end of our lesson on commas with series, dates, and places, or more like with commas. We add a comma to basically also show a pause. We add commas on series, right? And then we do not add a comma um, after the last words, right? And we see that the comma that we add before a coordinating conjunction, we call that an Oxford comma or a serial comma. So this is the end of the lesson. Thank you very much, grade 6. I really hope you're going to have an amazing evening further. Goodbye.